And I as well focus on Windows 365 Frontline, which is a new offering of Windows 365. So excited to talk to all of you here today. And I'm going to basically just do a very quick overview on some of the things that we recently announced and what boot and switch are, what our team is focused on going forward. So I'm going to keep this quite informal. Want people to just jump in and ask questions. I guess maybe one question that I'll very quickly ask is, should I assume a lot of knowledge on Windows 365? Should I assume, maybe a starting place in terms of the information that I share? I think that would be helpful to know for this community.
Yeah, I think just a high-level overview for those that may not be aware.
Yep.
I think we have to go super deep.
Okay, great. All right, so give me 1 second. Share my screen.
All right, looks good. Good see it.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna flip through a couple of slides, but really I'm gonna jump around a lot to just kind of cover a few different topics. So I think a starting place that I just want to start with is if you are new to the space of cloud or virtualization, I would say this picture is kind of really where the mindset and the direction is from the company is, where we're kind of evolving our overall virtualization story, as well as what we want to get out of virtualization as a company. Um, on the left side, you see the native PC, which is your Windows, today as it is. And then on the right side, you see both Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365. And they're both two products in virtualization. In a lot of ways, one of the biggest questions that we get is like, hey, when should I use this and when should I use that, and what's the difference? And at this stage, I would say, when I introduce myself, like I work on both Windows 365 and EVD, so we are actually one team responsible for both product for any virtualization technology, essentially, and at Microsoft, right? And in the middle, the Azure Virtual Desktop product, from the perspective of the company and where we're going next, is really the product that we're focusing on, sort of enabling the customer to have the full flexibility from a platform as a service perspective. Like it's always going to be via Azure Virtual Desktop. You can run your own infrastructure. You can choose every setting that you want. You can decide how you want to run everything. That level of flexibility and control and a consumption pricing model where you're essentially paying as you go. That's where Azure Virtual Desktop, and Cloud VDI is. On the right is Windows 365, which is, for those of you who are not familiar, is more sort of in the official virtualization space. If you're familiar with that, it's much more of a desktop as a service. It's a SaaS product. So it's not assuming that you're going to go set up the infrastructure yourself. It's not assuming that you're going to have network knowledge or VDI knowledge. It's assuming that you can be a desktop admin who's managing physical desktops today, and you can go and spin a Windows 365, what we call Cloud PC, assign it to a user, and then they are running, and you just apply settings and policies to it in Intune like you do any other physical device. So that's kind of the key component of Windows 365. And one of the other differences to highlight for it is that it is a predictable pricing model, meaning it's a subscription. We have 11 SKUs that you can choose. One of them, actually, they're now 12. We just released a new SKU that is 16V CPUs, that essentially are set SKUs, and you're just purchasing these SKUs for the users, similar to how the idea is it's modeled more after how you buy a laptop, essentially with very specific power. So the key distinction that I wanted to make before I kind of move on to the details is that's where Windows 365 is today. It's much more of a SaaS service. If you're looking for a solution that's easy to run, easy to use, and you're also, you don't want to go and create all these infrastructure yourself. But also the critical piece of it is that the vision for it, and this is why this picture really matters today, is that it's the evolution or the path towards getting Windows itself as an operating system to the cloud. So, meaning Windows 365 is not just trying to stick to the idea of, okay, we want to support virtualization, but to get to a point where anybody who can use a Windows machine can use it in the cloud or can use it in the OS and it's seamless for them. They don't feel like they're actually streaming Windows, and that's actually going to take a lot of work for us to do. If you're familiar with virtualization, it's been a long time there, and until we get to a point where you're on a virtual machine anywhere and you're like, I don't know that I'm on a virtual machine, right? I have no difference, like I'm streaming on Netflix versus actually watching a DVD. That's the point that we want to get to. So where you see that today, and in some of the features that I'm going to talk about, like boot and switch, is as a result of that vision. The Windows team is getting reorganized around this idea of focusing on taking Windows to the cloud, but also how to blend it into already the existing experiences that are on Windows. So Boot, for example, which I will talk about in a few, is the ability to actually take an existing physical machine that you have. Could be, running Windows. It could be a Linux machine. It really doesn't matter. You can go into Intune, set up a guided scenario, and essentially enable that device to now become a device that's booting directly into a cloud PC. So that skips any physical device components and just goes right into the device. And that sort of starts kind of giving you a picture of the idea of integrating deeply into the Windows shell and into those experiences. Switch also is another feature where it's like you're actually able to switch across screens, like you're just going from a cloud PC to your physical PC, like across your desktop. And those integrations into Windows are essentially really where you're going to see a lot of differentiation on the Windows 365 side as we go forward. So that's kind of the starting place that I guess, depending on where you're coming from in terms of background, that'd like to go over. Let me pause here and take any questions so far. I don't know if you guys do questions or do chat. What's the
Yeah, so for questions, we'll take questions during the session. We'll take them after. It just kind of all depends on where there's some good natural stopping points. But there's actually one question in the chat right now from Leaf. He's like, why take Windows to the cloud? Like, what purpose does putting Windows in the cloud when all of my devices are on premises?
It's a really good question. I think, there are a lot of use cases that are freed up in a world that is becoming most remote, most hybrid, most we're on the go. We're having your machine wherever you go, whether you're on a device, you're on an iPad, or you're on a Windows, or you're in Seattle, or you forgot your laptop and you're traveling, that you can actually access your data wherever you are, and that it just goes with you. It's really powerful, and it's not something that any other company can actually do because we have all the Azure infrastructure in the world. We are actually close to all of these geographic locations. We can create that experience for you. I think that's from an end user perspective. Like if you think about why would I, as an end user, actually care about this, it's the power of wherever I go, I leave and I can actually access it. And I don't have to carry a physical device to actually have the conduit to the device that makes me productive. From an organization perspective, I think really the value and where I've seen people truly see the power in it is just streamlining. Like, I mean, I came from the education space, and one of the largest deployment I did while I was working education was for a large school system that had 500,000 machines that needed to actually be spinned up in 8 weeks. In order for us to get those machines managed in the cloud, it was a lot of work. You got to enroll them, you got to apply the settings. It took us weeks of planning and thinking and doing all of that. With Cloud PC, I worked with another customer that literally did that 10,000 machines over 2 days. They just clicked a button, created these PCs, assigned them to a user, and then they're done. Um, that streamlining of being able to say, like, you know what, I'm actually now responsible for that endpoint, the cloud endpoint that the user is using, and I don't really care about the physical machine that they're on, and I'm actually able to manage those without having to go touch them. Like, now imagine from a, like, if we get to true scale in these spaces, imagine, and this is where I see customers, sort of getting excited about the possibilities there. it if you have physical machines in many different locations, you don't have to go touch those physical machines. You're managing the cloud PC. So that's kind of the power for the organization. Today, I would say we're still finding that a lot of the people who are using this technology are people in virtualization, right? The same people who use virtualization technologies today, whether it's merger acquisition or an additional physical machine, or offshore development or contractors. These are like where virtualization is today. But as we manage to make this more cost effective for organizations and we actually make it more seamless from an end user experience point of view, that's really where people are going to see a lot of value in it. And I already see that today. Like, got a lot of customers who are like, well, I used to give this person 3 devices that they would carry around. Now I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to give them one device, and here's 2 other cloud PCs. And on one, I'm going to do this work for this company, and another, I'm going to do this work. That flexibility and being able to focus your manageability in that way is really pretty powerful, I would say.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree. I think one of the use cases that I think makes sense for most people is that, before OneDrive, you didn't really have the capability of, keeping all of your documents and your folders and everything all kind of in one place. But nowadays with OneDrive, I could reimage a machine and I get all my files and everything syncs and everything is just the same. And so I don't really feel like I'm losing anything, but that's with a physical machine. But now think about the capabilities that we're adding into the OS, especially with Edge, where we've got workspaces now. And so if I can make a dozen different workspaces in Edge with all sorts of different like personas, if you will. I can say that, this workspace is just for my Microsoft work. I've got this workspace that's for personal things. I've got this workspace for something else. And then those workspaces sync with me as I go to different devices. But imagine a time when everything syncs. And so I can go to a cloud PC and I get the exact same experience as I get on my desktop PC. And the device I'm on doesn't really fundamentally matter. It's still a Windows 11 experience, but I could be on a physical machine that my work provides. I can be on a physical machine that I purchased that might be in my living room, could be just on a laptop that I own, or I can be on a cloud PC that my work has provisioned to me. In all three of those states, I can have all of the stuff that I need. And that's what's powerful about this whole story, is that everything that Sam has on the screen here, native on your tablet, cloud with AVD or cloud with Windows 365, in all of those cases, your state stays with you regardless of the device that you're on. And that's the power of all of this.
And I, like, if I may add one thing too, is like many of you here, like, if you're, I don't know, higher ed or K through 12, but like even in K through 12, which I would say has been primarily shared physical devices for such a long time, as people move more to work remotely, we saw a very clear shift towards more one-to-one, where people are started saying, okay, I'm going to give the student a device to actually be productive on. So I think as more and more people are working in different places, that productivity, that having the device really becomes even more critical. Um, Let me just I think I have a quick so like a couple of just very quick things here that I've already highlighted in. From a Windows 365 perspective, like you'll see if you haven't tried it yet, provisioning experience is like pretty much zero touch. You go, you assign a user a license, and then you go create a policy right in Intune. You assign it to an AD group, and then voila, they have a cloud PC. And that whole like zero trust, zero ramp, like all of these pieces are fully integrated into the concept of Windows 365. We also like have a lot of features that we built because it's a cloud PC. Like we can't do in your physical world. So um, many times we've heard about like, oh, I want a feature for the end user to be able to just get back their PC into a good known state. Well, we actually have literally a re like we have on the end user experience. Um, the user can actually do many things, like they can restart their machine, they can troubleshoot it, they can reset it, and resetting it would essentially re-provision a brand new machine to them again, fix any issues. So they can restore different points in time. You can also resize. You can say, okay, I was on a 2B CPU today. I'm a staff working in, I don't know, engineering school. I need a different machine, more higher powered machine. You can move my device and move me up to a 4 vCPU or an 8 vCPU temporarily and have all of the data be there. So a lot of these things can essentially stay there. So um, yeah,
That's a great point.
I'm trying to take a look at the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of good discussion happening in the chat right now.
Um, any questions here so far? How much time do you have, Richard?
We have until two Pacific, so
Okay,
feel free to jump around or it's completely up to you.
let me just so I'm gonna just share. Um, so this is just oh, it always goes to the screen. One second. You see, this is a quick demo of um, the boot functionality that Richard talked about, which we just released. Definitely, I think, we're seeing one thing I'm going to talk about in a bit too is Frontline, which is more of an offering that allows us to be more cost effective based on um, the use cases that you have. But this is just a quick video to kind of show you. So you can take a physical device that you have today. And I know many people have physical devices that are lying around, and you can just essentially turn it into a machine to boot directly into a cloud PC.
Actually,
Um,
Sam, are you playing the video?
yes, I am. Can you see it?
Okay, I don't see it. Am I the only one that doesn't see it, or do others not see it as well? I'm just seeing your PowerPoint, but just the slide view, not the video.
Oh,
Okay, seems like others are only seeing the PPT.
wait 1 second. Let me try again. Weird.
I just blame new teams because it seems to just always be a new team's problem. There we go. Now we can see a video.
All right. All right. Let me click play.
All right, looks good.
So you can see it says, hey, cloud PC data is stored in the cloud. You're just getting that login screen. So it turns into your machine right into booting right into directly to the cloud PC. So it skips all the other physical device components, and it's fairly easy to set up too. You can do that via a guided scenario. Um, it is Windows 11 only. I get that question a lot. It's like, is it available on Windows 10? And that's functionality that we just GA'd. Um, and I can also show you real quickly. This is more like the Switch experience that we are talking about. Um, so you've got multiple desktops here, and basically your cloud PC is just a desktop that you can switch directly into. So if you're used to that experience where it's kind of a PC inside of a PC instead of actually it being blended into your experience, that's one of the first ways in which we're starting to blend those two experiences together. And then you just connect directly and move across the machines. So those are some of the more end user focused pieces, I would say, that are kind of starting to. So you can see like I switch back and forth in this video between the desktops, and It is a small thing, but it's actually, I use it all the time. It's quite powerful to just not have that be a separate app that you're kind of launching. Um, and then I think, let me just see, the next thing I was going to show here
Uh,
is, yeah, go ahead.
And I want to kind of comment on a couple of these things. So um, first, the switching capability is actually really nice. So like Scott, myself, and Garrett and a few others on our team here, we actually just got access to internal cloud PCs. And what we've been doing is using the switch functionality to because I've got my own personal desktop that I actually use that has been Azure registered to the Microsoft environment. And so I've been using that for a while. However, when we got access to these new licenses, I was like, great, this is a perfect opportunity to test out Switch and see how that can work in my workflow. And so what I've been doing is I've actually got the Switch components set up, and I'll use the multiple desktops feature within Windows, just like Sam showed, and flip over to that VM, and I'm able to access everything because it's an Azure AD joined VM that's just being managed by Windows 365, and that works great. On the boot functionality that Sam had mentioned, what we're getting asked about a lot, and you guys can chime in the chat if this is a use case for you. But what we're getting asked a lot is actually on the AVD side of things around how do we create, like we have old labs, or we have old desktop PCs that we want to repurpose as like a VDI kiosk, where we could just boot directly into AVD, we can boot directly into Windows 365. And if you're like like an academic medical center, like we want to be able to use Imprivata, we want to use Epic, be able to just badge into a machine, and it's just running in VDI. And whoever's like moving from one desktop to the next, they get the same experience regardless of what machine that they're on, because they're booted directly into their VDI environment. Um, you know, Win365 boot solves some of that. However, AVD doesn't have a corresponding solution just yet. We're kind of toying with how to get that same functionality to work, but it's not quite the same as what Win365 boot is. But boot provides a much better, more streamlined kind of experience. So, right, as Randy's saying, so it's a thin client experience. Yeah, you've got thin clients like out there. If you use iGel or any of the third-party products that are out there that provide thin client solutions, those are out there. Win365 boot helps you leverage hardware you already have to accomplish that without having to pay for an additional license for something like iGel.
Yeah, and it could be, yeah, as you said, like a basically a machine. A lot of people have physical machines lying around that are existing hardware, so this
Mhm.
this really helps you kind of repurpose existing hardware here. Um, One thing I did, just kind of want to very quickly, because I realized I actually have I had this open earlier today, um, that is my admin center. So let me just show you very quickly, because I think sometimes that's the most helpful thing. So um, this is the Intune portal, and then here there's a Cloud PC creation. This used to be called Windows 365. Now we're calling it Cloud PC creation. So you have the provisioning policy, and when you essentially want to create a Cloud PC, you can see here. Um, you start by, this is, if you're familiar with Autopilot, it's kind of very similar to it. You just call it EDU test. You have two different licenses here, Frontline and Enterprise, and I'll talk about Frontline in a second. We automatically Azure AD join or intra join. I always have to correct myself now. And you can do hybrid. And then what we did here is, whether you actually have your own Azure network connection or you don't, we have a Microsoft hosted network that we actually do all of that work for you. So that really makes it super easy for a lot of people who don't have existing Azure um, infrastructure set up, but also if you already have Azure Network Connection, you can connect to it. So you select the geography, which is where you want the Cloud PCs to be deployed essentially, and then you can enable single sign-on on the machine. We have gallery images or custom images. Similar to how you're familiar with Intune, we recommend just the basic image plus Office 365. We actually include some optimizations in that image, like that are related to multimedia redirections, making Teams calls better on VDI essentially. And then you hit next, is your configuration, language. You can apply a name. Pretty much most of Windows 365 is actually um, comes with Windows Auto Patch if you have the right licenses, so you can enable that. And then you basically assign it to a specific group. And if you have, already licensed those users, as soon as you click next, you're done, you create. And as soon as you create, we check for each user in that group. If they're licensed, we create a Cloud PC for them. And where you see that afterwards is you get an all Cloud PC list here that shows I just provisioned these this morning. It takes about 20-25 minutes for a Cloud PC to be provisioned. I was recording a demo for Ignite and just very quickly did this. In same thing, you manage these devices exactly the same, but we add a lot of other capabilities to them, like, restoring to a cloud point, being able to reprovision, putting a cloud PC under review. There's a lot of different things that you can do here. So that's kind of the general experience. And then if you haven't seen this very quickly too, we have a web as well as an app experience where the user can essentially see their cloud PC. If I have a cloud PC assigned to me, I see it here, and I can take actions, rename it, restart. There's other actions that you can enable for the user, and then as soon as you click, you've got your data wherever you are. So that's kind of just a very quick giving you a feel for it. And let me pause for a second, see if there's any questions before I kind of cover very quickly Frontline and what that is and how you can use that too.
Yeah, so Randy actually said, give me a 27-inch flat panel with integrated thin client. And
Say
and I
more.
well and I kind of responded back with the kind of odd announcement when it came out was our LG TV integrated with the Windows 365 app.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or if you ever.
Yeah. So my next demo video is not actually the LG, but it's kind of along the same lines that I have here. Let me see if I can play it. And for some reason, I can't really go through without. Here we go. Can you see that screen?
Yeah, yeah, we got it.
Okay, so this is, um, I think there's a lot of integrations happening, basically integrating into the existing experience of, whether it's an LG screen, as you said,
Mhm.
or this example here is an Android phone.
Yeah,
We had a partnership with Motorola, and you could just basically connect your Android phone and your device and directly be able to have the Windows 365 Cloud PC integrated into it.
yeah,
Um, and that's, basically turning just your regular phone into a machine that you can use to do work on if you've got the keyboard and the mouse. Um, so that's kind of I would say, like, that's the direction. There's a lot of integrations, integrated experiences. Um, Good question. I don't actually know what Motorola model. I can figure that out for you. Um, I would say these are kind of some of the different things that we have there. Um, okay, let me do this just very quickly too. So yeah, for some reason I can't advance. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, your slides are moving now.
Yeah. So I wanna very quickly talk about Windows 365. So like today, the model that we have is we call Windows 365 Enterprise, and it's licensed per user. And one of the biggest things that we hear from customers, whether it's education or others, is okay, I love the product. It's super powerful. It's expensive for the use case that I have. Um, so this is a very quick thing that I want to kind of talk about. Is like I came from the shared device world, so so did Eric. Like we worked on these shared devices for a long time, and you can see here some of the shared devices that you're very well familiar with. You could have a shared device that you set profiles today on that are assigned for each user, right? You say, okay, Richard, Sam, and Scott are going to get profiles on that machine, and then they come in and they use it at different times. You have shared physical devices, they're just like unassigned, right? You're setting them up, and if you've got a cart in EDU or clinical station, if you're a medical center, you're just setting it up as unassigned, and then a bunch of users log into it. So for these scenarios, oftentimes the end user is not spending the amount of time that they spend on a machine that we expect like an information worker to spend on. Like I need my machine at night, I need it in the morning. I may actually leave right now and then come back in 4 or 5 hours and finish my email. And that's not the case for a lot of these usage patterns. And so what customers want with Windows 365 as well is an ability to service these types of scenarios with a more cost-effective solution. So we're kind of working through that. I would say we've initially focused on this left scenario here, and over time we're adding more capabilities to focus on the more even briefer use scenarios. But kind of our answer to that was like you see this here, just kind of showing the different types of usage that people have. And so our answer to that was um, Windows 365 Frontline, which I know the name makes it sound it's like a frontline worker only solution, but it is not an FSQ. It is not actually requiring frontline, so anybody can use it. Actually, and what we built with it today is more of a sort of a concurrency model that allows you to have a more cost-effective way to scale your Windows 365 deployment. So you can buy essentially the number of active sessions that you have. So you can say, okay, I have 10 or I have 100 people who are going to be on at the same time. So you buy those licenses, and we automatically allow you to provision 3 times those licenses. And then what we do is we automatically power on and power off these machines. So there are actually only 10, depending on the number of licenses that you bought, basically your concurrency, only those machines are going to be on at the same time. The rest can be off, and we do that completely automatically. So, you don't have to do anything special to do it. We also keep those machines up to date, even though we're shutting them down. We wake them up regularly to get Windows updates. We've done some, reboot optimizations within Windows Updates for Business. So, if you're disconnecting at the end of the workday, or the time, the duration that you have, um, you can actually we'll detect if there's a reboot pending, and before we shut it down, we'll apply the reboot so that it doesn't apply to you the next time you're there. So there's a lot of cool things that we just done to like really optimize the scenario. And the key here is that with one license, you're essentially getting three, and that allows you to sort of scale. And it's still the case that in this scenario, at least today, you are getting a machine that is personalized to that user. And as we go forward, we're looking into expanding this to more of the unassigned type of scenarios that I just talked about briefly. So that's kind of another thing that I do recommend taking a look at if you're looking for Windows 365 and you're like, hey, actually, I don't have full-time use scenarios. It's a good way for you to actually enable your users with a more cost-effective solution, but also still getting that full manageability via Intune, everything the same.
Yeah, I think in this kind of scenario, there's in education, there's always this, cost. We have to be cognizant of cost, right? And I think Frontline does kind of fit that bill to help out in certain situations. So if you're on the fence with looking at something like this, I think Frontline could help in certain scenarios.
Yeah, and I think I, recognize too, like I've worked in education that like, calling it frontline probably does not help, for you guys to look at it and be like, oh, this can work for me in this use case. Um, I, you know, I don't control naming at Microsoft, unfortunately. I did work on this product pretty closely, but was not able to influence the naming in a different direction. But do want to, if you have feedback as well, if you try it and you have feedback, I think we can definitely take that. So I kind of covered a lot of different type of things. So maybe I'll just leave room for questions at this stage, and if there's any specific area that you guys want to dive into in the remaining time, I'm happy to. I know Eric was on the call too. Eric, I don't know if you have a chance, if you're still on the call, if there's anything that you wanted to add here.
No, I think Eric had to drop. He had to go take
Okay.
care of a personal issue.
Okay.
But actually, Bo's here. Bo, I know that you had been asking me some questions about Windows 365. I don't know if do you have any questions that you wanted to ask the community as it pertains to some of the work that you've been thinking about with Windows 365?
Yeah, I think the main thing is what use cases do you see in your institutions for this type of scenario? Would you mostly be thinking about using Windows 365 for staff and sort of back office? Would you be thinking about it for classroom scenarios, perhaps particular subjects, like when you need the ability to do something that requires more compute power than your typical endpoint has? Like, where would you see this working in your environments?
Yeah, I think Leaf just mentioned in the chat here that he can see this being used for shared devices, but he's not sure about the additional cost and how that would get the business units to swallow that additional cost when compared to using a shared device license.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty common, right? I think we've got a number of shared use scenarios like Sam had just mentioned. And I think they're more pervasive across education than they are in other industries. And so just getting that cost right, I think is the balance that we have to make.
Yeah.
Right.
And one thing I want to say to that, like this is where I like the we kind of, as I said, started in this left here, but I think that that doesn't really meet the needs cost wise for people who are actually on the machine for like 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Like I think a
Yeah.
lot of machines in educations might be just generic machines that people are logging into for a very specific force. So we're definitely looking into expanding into that. We're actually actively designing and thinking about how do we enable that model for people. I think one key thing that we're trying to figure out is, how important, like, so far we have consistently had your personal data wherever you go, everything. Like you got your own disk essentially. And that has cost, right? It adds up cost quite a bit. So depending on the scenario that we're looking at into is like, okay, well, what are some of the use cases that you would see this in if you wanted to actually expand the use of it in what range per user from a cost perspective would start making it much more likely to be adopted. So we're definitely like I think now inching into that world. I think we started with more of the information worker and now kind of more shift worker or shared device for like maybe 6-7 hours if you're on that machine. But as we go forward, like figuring out more cost effective solutions for even smaller use cases like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think this would probably be a good community for you guys. If you guys wanted to set up like one-on-one interviews with folks that would be open to it,
Yeah.
I think you could probably get some good feedback from folks in a more one-on-one type of setting to see exactly like what the use cases are, how much people are willing to spend, that kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I see chargeback on the subscription is a major issue. Can you, I actually don't understand that. Do you guys know what means by that chargeback on the subscription?
I don't. Dan, if you want to come off mute, if you can, just kind of explain that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so for us, we have a lot of where departments are actually paying, like when departments buy computers, they're buying it out of their own departmental budget. So, like, if we're going to move to a cloud PC, it also needs to charge their department and not central IT for the VMs. So then we figure out how the heck we charge for all the different people that would maybe want it. So we kind of just have ignored it entirely and just do Azure Virtual Desktops. And then any department that wants it, we can spin up a pool and scale it and build it how they want it.
So if we solved that, would there be more propensity to look at Windows 365?
No, probably not. Because I mean,
Okay.
for us, it's the density. Yeah, for us, it's also the density too of like with Azure Virtual Desktop, we can build small pools and then scale them. For if we get 10, 15 users, you build 10, 15 small VMs, but they're only on when they're actually running during business hours, and then we shut them down. So then there's only one or two extremely small VMs running 24/7.
How much are you paying, do you think, for that? I mean, you don't have to share it on this call. We can have a follow-up, but it
It's
would be very curious. It would be
it's
something
still
curious for me to know.
it's still very small. So we had originally were doing B8, so burst VMs, in which we realized, we're not supposed to use those for, they have some slow issues for our IT pool. So it's, probably about 60 to 70 people. And that started getting bogged down. So we switched it over to using very small 2 vCPUs and then just having 2 people per VM and having it scale up and down. And we've been doing pretty well having, I think we're at 15 VMs, something like that.
Yep.
And kind of just been able to scale them up and down and then have timeouts of an hour for them.
Yeah, and I would say like this is, maybe thank you for the feedback, Dan. I would say this is where like I would say that in a lot of ways, Frontline is automating a lot of these things for a lot of people who would not actually have the know-how potentially or want to invest in managing the scaling up and down the pool, like because we're doing that and we're just bringing that into the cost. But I also understand the whole subscription versus consumption, and that how that enables things.
Yeah, we have
Um,
had to invest a lot of time and effort and, also building the VM pool and like how do we figure out how to auto install software so it's always,
yep.
always correct. And then now what we do is we have automation scripts that basically build the VM and then we capture it and then we'll use that to deploy new ones and we can just do that on a regular basis. But it took a
Yeah.
long time to fully automate that whole build process with Azure
Yes.
task chain stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like it was a lot of work.
Yeah. So I think this is like, this is kind of the key piece here is like this is not like we've completely made this SaaS that if you're a desktop admin, like I actually I will say this, the reason why I joined this team is I saw a demo of how we make provisioning and I was like, this is cool. Like we really did make this simple. It's not actually um, a gimmick to say like we made this simple. So I think that's really the key piece here is I've seen a lot of customers who like, suddenly they have, oh, I've got 100 machines that I need to like, create. Or actually like modern management, for example, like if you're testing modern management, you've got config manager today and you're trying to move to the cloud, Windows 365, having a bunch of cloud PCs, managing those and testing via that has been a very effective way too. Like nowadays all Intune policies whenever they're built they're testing them on Windows 365 cloud PCs because they work just the same. And so like being able to spin up 10 or 15 pilot can be a very easy way for you to kind of get started in that direction too. So there's been a lot of different pieces that people have been using in that. Um, but I think it's that know-how that not everybody has, and not everybody has the resources to actually invest in that too, or the folks who are going to be able to do that, or the time sometimes, right?
Mhm. So I understand, but I think there's a couple things before we wrap up. We got a 5 minutes here, and there's a couple of comments that I want to kind of get just kind of your thoughts on here. So Leaf says that if we throw in the kitchen sink with Windows Virtual Desktop would help, free Sentinel connector integration and Microsoft Defender tools. So I assume that this basically means that if we include all of this stuff, that there's more propensity to adopt WVD, Win365. If we add more of these services, make the cost less by integrating all that stuff, that is something that would make you want to go that route. You can post
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Is it so? Is the feed, just to make sure I understand, is like the feedback is, can this be more like bundled into certain things so that it's more cost effective? You're getting it through, you're paying for this, you're getting that. That's kind of the feedback basically.
Yeah, so you bundle in the WVD, the Windows virtual device licensing with all those other endpoint tools. So that way you're not having to like manage two sets of licensing. So I have like 10,000 endpoints and 5,000 of those are WVD, but I have to buy another 5,000 of Defender license because now I have to manage two different things, one that's dynamic, one that's not dynamic, yada yada yada. Does that make sense?
It does. Yep.
Okay. And then Matthew says cost is hard to beat with a low cost laptop with a student when it's $300 and you get that for 3 years. I mean, the cost is a no brainer. So what do we say to something like that?
I would say we have not yet reached the point in which we're, in my opinion at least, very competitive with a physical device, to your point, right? I think though we're thinking about what to do in that direction. Like when we say, okay, we want to take Windows to the cloud, like that's a huge part of it. It's like, how do we actually bring it so that it's actually much more accessible for these use cases? Um, I would still say actually I bet you anything that there are use cases in your, if you're, especially if you're higher ed, that you would benefit more from giving a student a cloud PC. Like if you've got a bunch of people who are doing, I don't know, like some at lab type of engineering type of solution where they needed like specific software, and they're not going into in physically, and like you can actually provide them with something and be able to shut it down and then give it to another student afterwards. The other part is like obviously we have not fully yet gone to education and said, hey, we've got an education centric solution in this space. I think that that's definitely something that hopefully in time we will look into. But at this stage, I would say, there are use cases. There may not be for every student where you're like, this makes sense vis-a-vis physical device, but there's a lot of use cases that I think I'm seeing people in the end when they crunch the number, the flexibility and the lower operational cost, it it adds up, and they're just like, actually, this is better for me.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Like you're probably not going to give a cloud PC to every single student.
Correct.
You're probably not going to give them even a multi-session session within AVD for every single student. But there are lab scenarios, there are kiosk scenarios, and that kind of stuff that I think we do fit in. But I wouldn't come at this from the lens of saying, hey, we have a $300 device. There's no way we're going to go with Cloud PC. It's like, well, yeah, you're probably not going to do that. But there is probably something in your environment, like Sam mentioned, that we could easily help out with there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I have this slide here that I'll end with. Like, this is not a very education focused necessarily, but this is what I've seen for customers in this space who actually benefit from Cloud PC. piloting new scenarios to accelerate movement to modern management, reducing the effort of test and iteration. Like when you don't have to go to a physical device and do stuff on it, and you can just provision it and provision it again, it actually really makes it easy to start moving in a specific direction. Using Cloud PC for migrations, also, we don't have necessarily like a tool that's moving you from Windows 10 to 11, but we've got a lot of people who are on 10 and you need to move them on 11. And this is a really good way to give them an 11 machine and be like, okay, here's your 11 machine, try it out, right? And so we're seeing that a lot too. Speed of deployment. Like if you've got a scenario where you're like, I just care about getting people and machines really quickly and having those machines managed, right? And secure and everything. Offshore workers, contractors, sudden new spike of new hires, right? That kind of really fits the need in this space. And then, just consolidation of device management practices. Like if you've got a lot of experience in physical device management, right, and you don't have that much experience in the VDI space, it takes a lot for you to go invest that knowledge in being able to do it.
Yep.
So these are kind of some of the scenarios that I see. Multiple devices, like if you've got somebody carrying multiple physical devices around, most of the time it just really doesn't make sense. Why why should they shuttle around? And I was very surprised, but so many people shuttle around 3, 4 devices because they need them for different reasons, and they just use them some of the time, right? So um, well, I know we're at time. Thank you for having me today. I hope this was helpful. I'm definitely gonna, go back and review the chat because I didn't have a chance to fully absorb all your questions and answers. And please feel free to provide feedback. Happy to always also do, schedule a session. As you said, Richard, like gathering some feedback and everything, always super helpful for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And we appreciate you and Bo and Eric taking the time to come and join us. So thanks to you all, and then thanks to everyone, and also thanks to Scott for giving us all the updates earlier. Thanks everyone, and we will see you the week after Ignite, and we'll probably have a jam-packed session then with all sorts of goodies. So take care,
Thank you.
everyone. Have a good rest of your week.
Bye.
Thank you.